Hey guys, what's up? Today I'll be doing a collection update. I got a pretty decent variety of, it's all death metal, but some new releases, some old releases, some new-ish releases. So a pretty good variety of formats, and let's get to it. First up, my favorite release of 2020 thus far is the Spectral Voice and Anhedonist split. I know it's a 7-inch, very short split, one track per band, but I think it's definitely one of those cases where it's quality over quantity, which is why it's my favorite release of 2020 so far. Both songs on here are phenomenal. I got this through Parasitic Records. This was a co-release between Parasitic and Dark Descent, and I'm really glad I picked up a copy because they are sold out now just about everywhere, and there's no plans to repress and stuff like that. But I originally bought this for only knowing Spectral Voice's discography and material, and this was my introduction to Anhedonist, and I'm very glad that this got to be my introduction to what's become a band that I'm very much getting into now and going back into earlier in their discography. But these bands both just go so well together. They both play that just doom funeral style of death metal, but they have a bit of different takes on it. Both are very dark and dreary, but Anhedonist really takes the depressive elements and really just utilizes them into the whole doom sound. And Abject Darkness is an absolute phenomenal song and a great introduction to Anhedonist and kind of what their sound is all about. It's a very powerful song, very emotional and sad, and that is the A side on this album, and that very intrigued me. And of course, Ineffable Winds is phenomenal, as always, by Spectral Voice, pumping out excellent material. Eli's vocal performance on there is definitely the highlight on that track, but right now, Ineffable Winds is probably my favorite Spectral Voice song. And yeah, this is an absolute phenomenal album. Especially as much as I bought this for the Spectral Voice song. I think I like the Ed Hedonist song a little bit better. Um, Abject Darkness, very powerful and depressive song. So check this out. Listen to it on Bandcamp. Uh, I heard there's no plans to repress it, but I've also heard someone say maybe Ineffable Winds will end up on some Spectral Voice full length or something else in the future. So listen to it on Bandcamp, listen to it digitally, check it out. That is the Spectral Voice and Anhedonist split. Phenomenal release of 2020. Next up is a band called Apoplexy, and this album is called Tears of the Unborn. I believe this was released in 1995, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. Yeah, this band is from Czechoslovakia. I got this through the Crypt, and I blind bought it. And judging by the album cover and band name, I was expecting like brutal or super heavy old school style death metal, but that was not the case. This is melodic death metal, very similar to a lot of the Finnish bands, especially like Amorphous and stuff like that. But after I got over that, like I just didn't expect it. This is a really good album. Not that I wouldn't like this. I just wasn't expecting that kind of music, judging from the aesthetic of the band and stuff like that. But this is a really good release, resurrected by Ted from the Crypt. There's definitely it's definitely death metal. You got your fair share of headbanger riffs, very death, late mid-era death inspired. The vocals remind me a lot of John Walker from Cancer. And, this is a really good release. There are some really impressive musician skills on here, especially the bass playing is really good. You have awesome songs like the opener, Manipulated and Deceptive Imagination. Also, this song is like an acoustic or nice interlude track every other time, which is very cool to hear. And yeah, there's definitely some interesting parts on this album. This is one of those just forgotten old gems that was rightfully resurrected by the Crypt. there's still a bunch of copies of this available in a wide variety of LPs and also CD. And this has the Dysmorphophobia, their demo from before their full length. So yeah, Apoplexy, Tears of the Unborn. If you like late era death, amorphous, maybe even like Sentenced, but a little more happy sounding, definitely check this out. But don't get me wrong, this is death metal for sure. There's some headbanger riffs on here. So that is Apoplexy, Tears of the Unborn. Next up is Mortician Massacre. Very happy to own this. This was done by Primitive Recordings. They're doing all the Mortician albums on Digipack. That it might even be, I want to say Roger is involved in that label, like he maybe runs it or something. I actually don't know. But anyway, I'm very happy to have this because I've been wanting this for a long time. It's really cool to hear the early days of Mortician, back when they still had, actual drummer, and some songs like Necro Cannibal appear on later full lengths like Hacked Up for Barbecue. But it's cool to hear with a drummer. And it's also cool to hear before Will Romer developed that super guttural sound, which I absolutely love. But it's kind of fun to hear a little bit of the early days before that. And Mortician's kind of been lumped up in that grindcore style tag. And you can definitely hear why from this before, the super guttural vocals. You can hear the Repulsion and Napalm Death, like the old school punked out grind influence in some of the vocals, which is very cool. So Mortician Mortal Massacre, this also has a bunch of live tracks from various shows. John McEntee playing guitar on a couple of the live tracks. And I also got this in a twin pack with House by the Cemetery, which is another awesome release. I also got this from Primitive Recordings. Love that artwork on the CD right there. And, this is where Mortician really started to solidify their sound. You got the drum machine pummeling away as usual, not to mention some of the most classic, Mortician samples and some of the most classic horror movies getting their EP named after an absolutely phenomenal Lucio Fulci film, The House by the Cemetery. That's cool. Songs like Defiler of the Dead, that intro, very eerie and powerful. And, Mortician doing Mortician as usual. And this also has, it's an extended version than the original release. You have a Celtic Frost and Napalm Death cover, which are awesome. And it is hilarious to hear the Procreation of the Wicked Celtic Frost cover done in Mortician style, down-tuned. It's just hilarious in the best way possible. I love it. Mortician makes that riff just sound ungodly heavy. And then you got a couple of 3 extended songs. You have Gateway to Beyond, which has a really catchy riff, Flesh Eaters, and Notorum de Mondo. So very awesome and classic material from the New York death metal legends known as Mortician. Up next is a 2020 release as well. This is Internal Rot, Grieving Birth. Internal Rot is a grindcore band from Melbourne, Australia. And they just play a super, super uncompromising, barbaric style of grindcore. I mean, this thing is right up your alley if you like bands like Insect Warfare, stuff like that. This is the Headsplit cassette tape release. And this thing is absolutely crazy. The riffs will knock you on your ass for sure when you first hear this. I also love this photo. It totally just embodies what this release sounds like right here. I thought that was hilarious. But this is some really special grindcore. Like sonically, there's really nothing new about it, but it's just riff after riff of chaos. And it's got that super compressed guttural vocal style, and it's definitely very much rooted in the Napalm Death stuff like that. Like a lot of the riffing style is very similar to that and that's, you know, they just take it up a lot of notches, you know, the super fast blast beats all the time, really quick songs, you know, that classic grindcore album pacing, but the vocal range is all over the place, high screams, gutturals, and you know, this is some truly special grindcore. I think there's something about an album that, you know, may not break any grounds, but in its own genre, it's able to just be so impactful and gnarly. So I highly recommend you check this release out. This is one of my, you know, the Anhedonist Spectral Voice split is my number one of 2020, but this is a high contender, and I know a lot of people would say likewise. Internal Rot, Grieving Birth. Check it out. And a release from last year that I got from Extremely Rotten Productions. This band is on 20 Buck Spin. This is Fetid, another phenomenal Pacific Northwest band, and this album is Steeping Corporeal Mess. 5 songs of gnarly, down-tuned death metal sludge. But that being said, these songs are not, they're not just chaos. Really dissecting this music, a lot of these songs are very complex, and I was reading something on the Metal Archives which described this album as a sophisticated sewage system, and that is a really good way to describe it, because Fetid has very well done to near complex songs, and a lot of their riffs can get fairly technical, but they still keep that just absolutely nasty barbaric sound, which is my favorite thing about this album. There are some killer tracks on here. Dripping Subtepidity is definitely my favorite. Consume Periphery is another awesome one. And the last track on here, Draped in What Was. Hang on. Draped in What Was. Yeah. That's got like it almost reminds me of a John Carpenter like film score style intro, which is really cool to hear. And yeah, this is an absolutely killer album. It really kind of straddles worlds of a lot of different kinds of death metal. You have that down-tuned sludge, but also that very precise. This band's super tight. The bass player, Chelsea, has the gnarliest bass tone, and it is absolutely awesome. I love this release. I only got into it this year. I didn't hear it when I knew about it when it first came out, but I didn't get around to giving it a listen until this year. And, you know, this thing's definitely going to be timeless. So if you haven't heard it, I highly recommend you check it out, because it will live long past the days of 2019. Fetid is truly a really impressive band. And that's all I got for today. Thanks for watching.